So, what do you think about therapists like you and me being on social platforms like TikTok or maybe YouTube? Therapists like you and me are becoming more and more very online, dispensing mental health advice, offering helpful tips, but sometimes doing questionable things like talking about their clients. Whoa. On today's episode, you will have clarity about it all by the end of our time together today so that you have a better understanding of what those boundaries need to be like for you and how to do really great work in that space should you so choose. Over the course of our time together today, we're going to be tackling some important questions like what's your why for doing this in the first place? And we'll also talk about the ethical considerations, the intersections of social media possibilities, but also the boundaries we need to uphold as therapists. We will talk about the risks potentially and liabilities to you for being a therapist on social media and the possible risks to either current or prospective clients because of your participation in a public forum. But we are also going to be talking about the many, many positives and the benefits and how, if you're in this game or thinking about getting in this game, to do this ethically and do it well so that you are of benefit to the greater good, as well as potentially your own practice. I'm Dr. Lisa Marie Bobby. My background, I am a licensed psychologist, a licensed marriage and family therapist, a board certified coach, and I'm also a clinical supervisor. I'm an AAMFT certified clinical supervisor, and I'm the founder of Growing Self Counseling and Coaching. And these days, I'm pretty online, probably more than I would like to be personally sometimes, but here we are. So I am not infrequently out there talking about things on social media. I host a client-facing podcast that has a fairly large footprint. And over the last year or so, I have been starting to dabble with other forms of social media, including YouTube. And I also do this podcast for us therapists and have social content going out in that realm. And so there are a number of things that I have been doing personally for my benefit, for your benefit, and it's given me a lot of time to reflect and get clear about my own boundaries. But I think additionally, what I'm bringing into this space, I am a clinical supervisor. I am responsible for the training, the education, the development of other marriage and family therapists, both in their competence to do good work, but also in their ethics. So I think a lot about what I'm doing, not just with my own work, but as a role model for other developing therapists. And that's why I wanted to tackle this topic on the podcast today for you. Because if you're a therapist in private practice like me, you might already be dipping a toe in that online pool in hopes of getting more exposure for your business. You may be way in the pool, did a cannonball into the deep end, and you have the groovy dance moves and walking around with a selfie stick and all the things, which is fantastic. Or you might be sitting on the sidelines watching all of this in horror and not really knowing what to think, which I completely understand. And speaking generally, I do think that there have been a lot of benefits for therapists and the public because of us therapists being on social media, talking about our work, sharing our perspective, because I think it has changed the culture in really positive ways. People have become much more comfortable with the idea of therapy, the idea that it is a noble and virtuous thing to do to work on yourself is good. I view that as being one of the direct positive impacts of therapists like us being more out in the world, coming out of our offices and talking to people, that kind of thing. It's changed things in a positive way. And it is undeniably true that there have also been some pretty serious drawbacks, downsides, honestly, risks to clients, but also risks to therapists that we aren't really talking about yet. And so that's why we need to talk about it today. For you to begin wrapping your head around all of this and answering some of the questions around how do I feel and who do I want to be in this landscape? How do I want to show up in the world? Let's first talk about the why behind why you might want to get involved. And so, first of all, for me, what I will tell you is when I think about the advantages to being on social media in the public sphere as a therapist, the things that I have felt really, really good about personally and professionally is related to how we can use social tools and particularly educational vehicles like this one, videos, podcasts, social posts that educate and inform the public so that they can make informed decisions about the choices that they have. That is literally what I'm doing here with you and for you right now. I do this for prospective clients and the public at large, but that's why it was so important for me personally as a clinician, as a therapist, as a coach, as somebody who also, though, is a supervisor and has a sense of responsibility for how are we supporting therapists and helping therapists really be healthy, well, achieve love, happiness, and success, and get the kind of support that we need in order to grow and evolve and do great work in the world. I mean, that's literally why I'm here doing this with you, so that you have a chance to learn about yourself, develop an understanding about maybe not even just the issue that you are grappling with or what to do, but also getting some clarity and some direction for how to handle this. And this is also the attitude that I take when I am going online and talking about things that my clients might care about, talking about their issues, talking about the process of change, what does the trajectory of changing a situation even look like or involve, because getting involved in things like growth work, therapy, coaching, is a high elaboration endeavor. People think about it for a while before they get involved, and they really need to understand the choices that they have in front of them, even around things like what kind of therapist do I connect with? Because you and I know that not all therapists are the same. The skill set of a licensed psychologist, which is a licensure I hold, is extremely different than the skill set of a licensed marriage and family therapist. Two totally different things. And the general consumer does not understand these differences. And so to be watching videos, researching things that people are posting online is helping them figure out, okay, what's going on with me? What kind of professional do I need to talk to? What would be involved with this? Is this something that I want to do? And that's very valuable for me. So that's my why. I have very strong values around education, around helping people grow and develop, around putting trustworthy information in front of people to support their evolution. And that's why I'm here. It feels like a mission for me. It is a mission of growth. I'm on a mission for clients, and I am on a mission for you. Love, happiness, and success for therapists. But one of the things that I would invite you to do is for a second, and you can even pause this podcast for a minute if you want to think about it. What are your values that would call you to get involved in the social sphere in the first place? Is it completely mercenary intentions? I don't know, it might be, but it's important for you to be aware of that. Also, what is your mission? What do you want to create in the world because of your work in this sphere? Connecting to your mission, your purpose, your values leads to a why, and also be holding very clearly in your mind, who do you serve and how can your involvement in a public space help them? So get clear about all of these things, because when you have clarity about that, it will help you get clarity about why you're here, what you want to do, and that also becomes the framework for the ethical decision makings and the boundaries that you will need to set for yourself around this work. But you need to be connected to your own purpose first. With this in mind, we can talk about some of the ethical considerations that come up around this and some things to think about in order to make sure that you stay on the right side of the line. For example, let's just talk really quick about some things to not do, like therapists sharing anonymous case studies with their audience, talking about their work with their actual clients in a public forum. So, the ethics of our profession are quite clear in that we cannot do that without getting explicit written consent from our clients. And that is really important. But it's also not enough, because I believe that this actually goes into deeper ethical layers here that may not be the rule of law, but is still the right thing to do. So, for example, in my own case, I have a podcast, the Love, Happiness, and Success podcast, that is for civilians. And I have clients, personal clients of mine, who listen to that podcast. They'll show up to our sessions and say, "Hey, I heard you talking about this XYZ thing on the show the other day. That was great. Thanks for communicating about that," which is fine. I'm educating them too. But I would never talk about them, and certainly about their situation in detail ever, without their consent. But honestly, like, for my own ethics and my own personal value system, even if I did have their written consent, I wouldn't do that anyway, because of how uncomfortable it would make me and them feel, and because we would be bumping up around power differentials. Like, as things stand now, I have talked globally about, XYZ situation. And sometimes when people encounter this type of scenario, this is how they respond, or whatever, just providing information. And even with that, I have had my personal clients who listen to my podcast come back and be like, "Was that me you were talking about on the show the other day?" And it was absolutely not. It was me speaking in generalities, but because my clients related to that experience, and we had talked about how, some of their life experiences were congruent with whatever situation it was I was talking about on the podcast, they are now wondering if I was talking about them. So it is super important for us to be aware of the level of anxiety we can create in our clients who may be connected to whatever it is that we're putting out there in the universe. Now, there are some clinicians who are like making a whole show out of this. Esther Perel, for example, basically has therapy sessions that are recorded and then posted online. And I am sure there are agreements and pages and pages and pages of waivers and disclaimers and all of that that people have to consent to before they do that with the great Esther Perel, which, legally they're consenting. And I'm going to assume that everybody feels really good about that. But the other thing that we need to be aware of in our role, again, it goes beyond the legalities. It's related to the power differential. And refreshing you, going back to ethics in counseling school, there is always a significant power differential between a therapist and their client. And it is very important to keep that in mind, especially if you are working with a client population who may be struggling. They are not in a good place. They're not feeling good. They're dealing with serious clinical mental health issues. They may be struggling with things like depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, trauma. They may have had a string of very regrettable life experiences with authority figures or caretakers in their past who used, abused, or betrayed them. And part of the healing process, the therapeutic process, is the therapeutic relationship. It is the relationship itself. And what we want to have happen so that our clients can heal is that they feel strongly bonded to us and that this is a real relationship for them. They can look to us as an authority figure, as a guide, as a temporary parental replacement where they're having corrective emotional experiences. And so for this reason, we therapists have to be incredibly careful and sensitive about what it is that we are asking our clients to do, particularly when that thing may be for our benefit or the benefit of our private practice. For example, even a therapist asking a current or even former client for their consent to be, soliciting a testimonial that we're going to post on social media or Google Places for Business. You can't do that because of the power differential. And certainly asking a current client for their consent to be talking about their case, even if it is anonymous and fairly de-identified, is still questionable because of that power differential. And are our clients going to be completely genuine, or are they going to say yes to things that they might not fully want to do rather than say no to us and risk this very important relationship and fear that if they aren't meeting our needs, we might not meet theirs? I know that this is hard to think about, but truly, as a clinical supervisor, I would strongly discourage any therapist, particularly one of my trainees, to do this at all. If you want to talk about something online and have a case example, make up a story about a fictitious human that has most things that are different than your actual client, but that could still, be a vehicle to illustrate a point. Or don't talk about people at all. Speak in generalizations. So that's something very important for us to be thinking about in terms of not just our ethics, but our core values when it comes to what we are doing online and how we're doing it. So keep those points in mind as you are figuring out your ethics around this. And we also really need to talk about the potential risks here, both to you and your clients. So first of all, for example, from my personal value system, I really struggle with the fact that there is a very low bar to entry around people who are either therapists or assuming the role of therapists, like unqualified, uncertified coaches who are pumping information out into the world as authority figures that people are taking action on. Literally anyone can do this. And what this has created is a lot of variability in the quality of the information that is coming out to people online. Prospective clients, perhaps your clients. There are many charismatic, enthusiastic therapists, coaches, gurus of all kinds with strong opinions and little evidence-based research to back the things that they're saying, but they do a really good job of creating content, getting eyeballs on their work, and getting people excited about what it is that they're saying. And so one of the biggest problems that this can create for us is that our clients may be connected to a variety of influencers that could actually be interfering with our work with them. I don't know about you, but I have clients all the time who are telling me about podcasts that they listen to, YouTubers they watch, social media accounts that they follow. And sometimes this can be really positive. But, we know as therapists that it is not a good idea for anybody to be working with more than one therapist at the same time because it pulls people in different directions. But you need to know if you are saying one thing in your session and helping your client go forward in one direction, and your client is having a very real, powerful parasocial relationship with an influencer who is telling them something else that is in conflict with what you are trying to do with them in therapy, you need to know about this. So part of my standard practice now is asking my clients who they follow, if there are YouTubers or podcasts or social media that they're excited about, right? And I hope for their sake that they have found a non-official support community of other qualified professionals who are responsibly putting forth high quality information that is supporting the cause of health, wellness, growth, and supporting our clients' development in the same direction that you are. Because if it isn't, it can, in a very subtle way, create a rupture. Another real risk here is that your clients can be getting mixed messages from a variety of different sources that undermine their work with you and damage their trust in your authority and your credibility as a competent practitioner. For example, both you and I know that there are vastly different modalities and orientations towards therapy, towards coaching, towards personal growth, and most of them are quite valid when applied appropriately by someone who knows how to utilize these techniques. I had a wise supervisor once tell me, "Many roads lead to Rome." Meaning that none of us have the way, the truth, and the light. It's not just that cognitive behavioral therapy is always the right thing to do any more than emotionally focused couples therapy is the way. That is certainly something that developing early career counselors sometimes need to go through as a phase where they are quite zealous about whatever orientation it is that they're passionate about. But I think as we grow, mature, evolve, we develop a quite healthy sense of humility that there are many ways of helping people that are valid and effective. But our clients don't know that. And so when you are talking to them about how their growth process is going to happen, either through emotionally focused couples therapy, they might hear a podcast about the Gottman method of marriage counseling or whatever, and think, oh, this sounds so different than what I'm talking to my couples counselor about. Could they be wrong? It's not that you're wrong. It's that there are different ways of looking at this situation, different ways of solving the same problem. But be checking in with your clients about this to see if there are these little micro ruptures happening because of what is coming to them through social media or their online activities that could be sabotaging your work with them without you even knowing. And one of the other biggest risks that I see with social media and therapists being online, I am sure you have experienced as well. And that is the risk of having not just our clients, but I think the general public engaging in a lot of self-diagnosis based on the things they encounter through social media, TikTok, influencer videos, and they walk away thinking, oh, I have borderline personality disorder. And they might have borderline personality disorder, in which case maybe that was helpful. But we also know, think back to counseling school and reading through the DSM and how you and literally everybody else in your program read some of those descriptions and were like, oh my gosh, I have that, right? I mean, like, it's a joke about what happens to people in counseling school. They self-diagnose with everything, or they start looking at their families in a different way because they're just starting to understand what the criteria are and what it means. And again, it can be super helpful for people to be developing a new narrative, arriving at an accurate diagnosis that finally helps them put all the puzzle pieces into place and move forward and get treatment, right? I think that's super positive. But what we also see now is that because more therapists are talking openly about mental health conditions on short form content platforms like TikTok, like Instagram, I think that the world at large is having that counseling student phenomenon where they're like, oh, they're talking about me, or oh, they're talking about my partner. Oh, that is definitely my mom, right? And now we have people who are convinced that they have an attachment disorder, or that their partner is a narcissist, or that they're being gaslit, right? Like all these things, which, if they're actually happening, can be quite serious and problematic. But we are also seeing people watering down these terms and these concepts through not understanding how serious and extreme these behaviors typically are. This waters down the understanding of what it actually means to have PTSD, a very real and very serious clinical mental health disorder when everybody is talking about their trauma and their triggers, and how that may invalidate the experience of someone who is actually having flashbacks and nightmares and can't leave the house, right? Is also creating problems for people relationally, particularly when these terms are getting weaponized. For example, speaking as a marriage and family therapist, it is the norm for distressed relationships to fall into a pursue, withdraw pattern. But over the last couple of years, people are connecting with material online around attachment disorders and taking this normal life experience, but then conceptualizing themselves or their partners as having an attachment disorder, either anxious attachment or avoidant attachment styles. And what you and I know that the general public does not is that actual, real deal attachment disorders are quite significant, and they are coming out of oftentimes quite severe childhood abuse, neglect, growing up in a family with a serious substance use disorder. I mean, there's some tough stuff that goes into this. But it's such a huge problem for people to begin using these pathologizing terms to understand their own experience or pathologize their partner because of their exposure to these online sources and how detrimental that can be in a relationship, especially for someone who's consuming a lot of content around narcissists or around gaslighting. Like, again, these things are real, and they are typically found in the context of highly abusive relationships, which are also very real. But I personally have had to have so many conversations with clients, especially around relational work or in couples counseling, to say having to work on emotional intelligence skills or maybe being a little self-absorbed, not a super great listener, is not the same thing as being a malignant narcissist. Or to say out loud, somebody disagreeing with you is not the same thing as you being gaslit. The reason why we need to push back against this and have a different perspective with our therapy clients who may have been exposed to these ideas is that without it, it can become incredibly disempowering for them. If they are displacing blame on their partner, you're gaslighting, you're a narcissist, it is so destructive to relationships because all of the growth and opportunity stops. Now, of course, if this is actually what is happening, we need to be allies and join with our clients to change or, prevent their continued exposure to highly abusive relationship patterns. But colluding with our clients in inappropriate psychopathology, either of themselves or others, is detrimental to their growth process. And so I hope that we, as responsible, ethical therapists who understand what these things really mean, can be a real force of good in the culture if we're talking about this out loud. Yet another very serious risk from my perspective to having therapists being online talking about the things and, people taking this in is that there's a real risk of false equivalence. When people are turning to online sources for information, self-diagnosis, trying to learn how to change things, to develop themselves, listening to what the TikTok guru says about how to manage depression or whatnot, instead of getting involved in competent mental health treatment, people like us know that therapy is totally different than listening to a podcast or reading a social post. But people who have not been involved in therapy before might literally not know that. I'll need to be saying out loud that getting information is great, but it is not necessarily the same thing as doing the work. We know that the process of experiential 3, 2, 1. We know that the process of therapy or high quality coaching is quite experiential. It happens over time. We peel onions, we lay things and then build upon them. What we do is experiential. It is not informational. And the real risk here is an uninformed civilian thinking that they are doing what they should be doing by absorbing information or following somebody's social posts or doing the recommended tips or whatever, but that they are not engaging in actual therapy with someone like me or you because of this false equivalence. They think they're doing the work and they're not. And it's a risk to them. It is a risk to their outcomes and a real opportunity cost. So these are some of the real risks that have been on my mind, and I hope that they've landed with you so that you can be thinking about how you want to be speaking to some of these things as potentially a very online therapist yourself. Now, it is also true that there are many positive aspects of our being online, doing things on social media, communicating about what it is that we do. There can be benefits for us and certainly benefits for our clients and the culture as a whole. And so some of these that I think are most powerful and positive comes back to the normalization of what it means to work on yourself. That, to be the kind of person who is conscious of your issues and trying to improve yourself has become normalized and it has become celebrated and prized. And so I think that that is a fantastic thing for sure. Another really positive thing that's happened because of therapists like us being online is related to the demystification of what it is that we do. For the longest time, therapists worked in isolation in these little therapy rooms with the door closed. Every once in a while, somebody would come in, somebody would go out, but nobody really knew what happened in there. And now, because we are talking about it, sharing our perspective of what therapy is, how it works, how people change and grow, people are developing a more clear idea about how it works, why they should get involved, but also what high quality growth work actually involves and how to make informed decisions about what kind of helper they should get involved with. And I think this is especially positive when it comes to helping people make choices about what kind of provider they need to see for different kinds of problems. A licensed psychologist who specializes in clinical mental health with a subspecialty of PTSD or anxiety disorders is the right person to see for people who are dealing with that set of symptoms. It would not be a good idea for somebody who is struggling in their marriage to see that licensed psychologist who specializes in anxiety disorders for the purpose of improving their relationship. You and I know that, but the general public doesn't. Additionally, another thing that's happened is that the general public does not really understand that therapy is for the diagnosis and treatment of mental health conditions. It is for insight, and it is for an introspective type of personal development that frequently goes back into the past to understand ourselves, our histories, but is not always connected to helping people create outcomes and changing things in their lives. That is the realm of coaching psychology, which is another evidence-based school of thought that is for the purpose of helping people grow and attain positive changes in themselves, their relationships, their careers. Specific outcomes can be improved through coaching, not necessarily through therapy. So especially for high-functioning clients that are seeking real, tangible changes in specific parts of their lives, if they connect with a traditional insight-oriented talk therapist who wants to peel the onion and talk a lot about their parents, they get super frustrated. That is not what they want. They want to change their lives, and that is not what this is. On the other side of this, we can also frequently have people who are experiencing really tough stuff that need that kind of slow reparenting, deep support, going back into the past, or actively addressing mental health symptoms, and they are connecting with untrained, unlicensed, uneducated, self-anointed coaches through social media platforms and genuinely having no idea that tapping these people for help has a very real risk involved of making it worse for them instead of better. At best, wasting their time, money, and an opportunity cost, but at worst, not getting the treatment that they really need and deserve for what could be very serious mental health symptoms. But for people like us, talking about these differences in a public sphere is such a public service because it is helping people understand these differences in a different way so that they become informed consumers and able to make informed choices about the right path forward for them so that they can get the help they need, get the outcomes they want, and be protected from connecting with the wrong type of helper. So there are lots of benefits for our being online to educate the public in a helpful way. And it is also important, though, for us to be highly aware of the boundaries around what it is that we do. We talked about some of this at the beginning of today's episode related to ethics and related to our understanding of the power dynamics that we always need to be aware of. But additionally, I think our commitment to being of genuine benefit to the people that we seek to serve and staying connected to our own value systems can be very protective. However, we also have to think about legal considerations and the impact of our disclosure. It's important for all of us, and this is true for me too, that when we are operating online, interacting with the public, particularly in situations where we might be speaking to people's situations, answering questions that somebody in our community has posed to us. It's really important that we are thinking about liability issues and being very, very clear. We're communicating, I am not your therapist. We don't have a therapeutic relationship, and being sure to speak in generalities, providing trustworthy evidence-based information to people or encouraging them to get help, as opposed to saying, here's what to do from a position of authority that is not appropriate for us in this realm. This isn't somebody that you have a personal relationship with, and we need to be very careful about what those boundaries are in terms of being directive, particularly in this kind of forum. So when I am answering questions publicly, I'm very overtly clear about what I am doing for myself and for anybody that I might be talking to. The fact I am providing information and I am openly discussing the differences between information and a therapeutic or growth process so that people understand that listening to a podcast is not the same thing as being in therapy. And if I am seeking to respond to somebody's question, I'm really careful to say, I'm not your therapist. I don't have a lot of information. And generally speaking, you might consider X, Y, Z. And just being very careful about what we are telling people and like considering, like, is somebody going to take action based on what we are saying, because we are authority figures, and that we always need to be overtly communicating the fact that we trust other people to be the ultimate authority in their own lives and make the right decisions for themselves, and that they maybe feel supported in that decision-making process by the content that we're putting out, rather than having someone who knows nothing about them and who does not have a relationship with them speaking into their lives and telling them what to do. Many social influencers, self-anointed gurus on TikTok and whatnot are more than happy to do exactly that, which I think is problematic. But I think that we therapists who are ethical and values-based can begin to correct the culture by not participating in that and also talking about the fact that it is actually problematic. But another thing to think about is the impact of your personal disclosures through online platforms and how they could potentially impact your client's process. For example, on social media accounts, maybe you want to post a picture of your dog, which in many regards is perfectly appropriate. You just got a new puppy. You're excited about it. There's your puppy in little sweaters and booties. And isn't it adorable? Yes, it is. And you have a therapy client who follows you online, who just had to put their love of their life, Labrador Retriever, to sleep. It was 14 years old, and they are grieving the loss of their dog. Now, as their therapist, to be with them in that space, you would never in a million years say, I just got a new puppy. Do you want to see some pictures? Because that would be incredibly insensitive, inappropriate, and would likely shut down their grieving process and their feelings of comfort in what they could or should disclose to you about their experience because of your experience and what they now know about you and your personal life. Freud, the psychoanalysts, they wanted us all to be blank screens upon which our clients could project whatever they wanted to believe about us. And I think it's good that as a profession, we blew most of that up by the time we got through the 70s and 80s. But there is still, whether or not you have a psychodynamic orientation, there is still a need for clients to believe whatever they need to believe about us for transference, but also for us to be as a little bit of blank screens so that we are not becoming obstructions to our clients' growth process. If clients know too much about us personally, it can be an inhibiting force that prevents them from utilizing us and this relationship in the way that they need to and deserve to. So before you just start posting things online, even if they seem relatively cute and benign, particularly if they are of a personal nature, it's very important for you to be thinking carefully about what you're choosing to post, the fact that your clients, both in the present, past, future, may see that, and how that could potentially impact their relationship with you and their comfort with you. Could go on and on about this topic. I think that this is just such an important subject for us to be grappling with as a profession. And I know that today I have shared so many of my opinions and perspectives, and I am so interested to hear yours. Are we connected on LinkedIn yet? If not, hit me up. I will be posting this online, and also I'm going to be posting some follow-up questions and discussion points. And I'm so interested to hear your opinion, your comments, your reactions, any follow-up questions that I can speak with. And there you go. We're going to be online together in this space. And then additionally, as always, I want to provide some more resources for you. If you're not already following this podcast, please do. Love, happiness, and success for therapists. It is all for you, about the things that we are going through as counselors, as therapists, as a profession as a whole. And I make these for you. So I hope that you spend time with me, subscribe to the podcast, and also share it with your community so that everybody has access. And let's just start a conversation with all of us together. And then also, earlier in today's show, I shared some of my perspective about the differences between coaching and therapy. And if you had some thoughts or reactions to hearing me say this, I have some additional resources for you. In my experience, not enough therapists really had the opportunity to learn about coaching, be educated on what it even is, much less become credentialed in it. Many are coaching curious, which I think is a very positive thing, because incorporating coaching into your existing skill set can many times help you create a kind of professional experience that is difficult to attain if you are just firmly in a clinical mental health or traditional therapy realm. That can be an obstacle for many therapists. So because of this, I have developed an evidence-based coach certification program that is developed by therapists for therapists that will make you eligible to become a board certified coach like me. Here's how to learn more and access the free resources that I put together for you. Come to growingself.com/coach to access a free 2-part training series that I made for you. Together, we'll dive into: is coaching right for you? What is coaching? How is it different from therapy? How would it change your career potentially or not? Just so that you can educate yourself, learn more, and see if it's something you might be interested in. And you'll also learn about the BCC coaching credential, how it is different from an ICF coaching credential, but you'll also learn what is involved in order to become a board certified coach in terms of the education, the experience hours, the testing requirements, all of the things. You'll get everything in this completely free 2-part training. Plus, I'll also share a 30-page workbook that I've created for you that will help you do some of this thinking around your professional identity and serve as a roadmap/project management plan for you if you do decide to become credentialed as a coach. coach. So it's all for you. It's all for free. growingself.com/coach. That's all I have for you today, my friend. Thank you so much for spending this time with me and for liking and subscribing and following in all the places so that we will be very online together. And I look forward to connecting with you on these platforms for even a discussion of how we want to model appropriate, helpful, ethical, values-based online activity for our clients and each other. See you later.